Welcome back to Normal Island. I hope you had a great weekend. I'm Curtis Daly, and I'm not wearing a suit jacket tonight. I don't know what came over me. I went, you know what? We're going to cash it up. Now, tonight, I'm really excited. I'm joined by our newest contributor, Sarah Delau. Sarah, how was your weekend?
Yeah, it was good. It was good, thank you. I've just been recovering from a cold, so I still have still got
Oh,
some congestion. So sympathy for Sarah. I said this on debrief on Saturday, so I'm still
okay. Everyone in the
getting
chat,
sympathy.
give sympathy for Sarah because she's been a bit under the weather,
Yes,
but
please.
we're all good now. We're all
We
good.
are.
But we've got a really big show tonight, and coming up is Labour's toughest stance on refugees seeking citizenship. Stormzy. Stormzy sells out to McDonald's. Richard Tice pushes climate conspiracies, and Starmer is to send British troops to Ukraine. Now, before we start, make sure you like the stream. I know I say this every single time, but it's really important. It helps the algorithm. Keep those comments coming in. We've got loads already, and we've barely even started, but please make sure you do that because later on in the show, we're going to read out the comments together with our producer and guest. But also, even just after the show, I like to read the comments anyway and try to respond to most of them. We're also pushing toward 20,000 subscribers. We are so close, and that is our short-term goal. So please make sure you hit that subscribe button and tell everyone about Turn Left, the new kid on the block. Now, on to our first story. The Labour Party is to make it harder for asylum seekers to be granted citizenship. Fresh guidance states anyone entering the UK illegally, having made the dangerous English Channel crossing on a small boat or hiding in a vehicle, for example, will be refused citizenship. The Home Office says the government has merely strengthened rules that were already in place on who could obtain citizenship. The new policy means anyone applying for citizenship from the 10th of February, having previously entered the UK illegally, will be refused regardless of how long ago they arrived. Now, I thought this particular quote was really interesting. When refugees become citizens, they feel a greater sense of belonging as full members of their communities with a stable future for themselves, their children, and generations to come. Now, that was a quote in a letter sent to the government signed by Christina McAnea, I think that's how you pronounce the name, General Secretary of Unison and the Church of England. Sarah, I want to first ask you about integration. I mean, that's what we hear a lot. People coming here, not integrating. But that quote basically says we need to make it easier for people to integrate. I want to get your thoughts on that, first of all.
I mean, it's something that I hear quite often, like this myth of integration as though it's like a one-way street. And I think whenever immigration policy is discussed in Britain, we hear the same tired refrain, but migrants must integrate. And I think it's a familiar dog whistle, one that kind of just blames the newcomers for social fragmentation, excuse me, rather than actually examining the barriers that put them in place by that have been put in place by the state. But integration isn't a solo act. I think it's a process of mutual adaptation. And I think, and I do want to get into Labour in a second, but I think what the Labour Party is proposing at the moment is a policy that does the exact opposite of fostering integration.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, because there is this sort of two-way thing. We always see integration from the point of view that they have to integrate with us. I mean, you've got to really think about this for a second. Say, I'm going to use a weird anecdote, but I think it's close to home. You go to a friend's house and you meet their family for the first time or whatever, something like that. It's usually down to the host to welcome you in. I mean, that's the sort of interactions I've had usually. When people meet my mum, she's incredibly warm and welcoming. If she's watching, I know she's not, but she should be. She might like that. But yeah, so you kind of welcome people in. And we don't do that at all when it comes to this country. And then we expect people to integrate. Now, of course, if you want to come to this country, you're going to have to try. And no one's suggesting that they don't, apart from right-wingers. But it strikes me really odd to say, well, we're going to make it harder for you to have citizenship. Surely that alienates people, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
You feel like you don't truly belong.
No, absolutely. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I agree. I think a person who knows that they'll never be granted citizenship, no matter how long they've lived here, is not being given an actual incentive to integrate, but only a permanent barrier to actually belonging. And I think the message is quite clear when they try to implement things like this. Like, you're here to work, to contribute, but you can never really truly be a part of us, like this us versus them narrative. And I think that's a fundamental contradiction. I think there are plenty of studies out there that have shown when refugees are granted citizenship, or when people are granted citizenship as a whole, their economic contributions increase, their children thrive in education, and their participation in the local community grows quite significantly. But I don't know if this will be an effective way for integration at all. I think when you block people from citizenship, you are institutionalizing alienation, and I think that's what the Labour Party are risking when they do that. And I think it's kind of quarantining anyone who decides to come into this country, that they remain on the margins of society, unable to really plan for their future, and denied the full rights of what it means to actually I don't know, to make participation in civic life meaningful. So yeah, I think a huge hindrance.
I mean, this policy is something that I don't think is going to outrage many people. I mean, attitudes in this country towards migration and refugees are not exactly aligned with what we believe, but let's think of this as a logical policy. I think it completely fails. I mean, they want to essentially say, well, you came here illegally. That's naughty. So no citizenship for you, whilst also not supporting safe and legal routes. So people have no choice. Why do you think successive governments, it's not just Labour, it's not just Tories, successive governments, make it impossible for people? You know, at least if Labour said, we're going to open up lots and lots of legal routes, and then they could say, well, if you use these safe and legal routes, there's a path towards citizenship. If you come on boats, you're not going to get citizenship. They still would look tough because they're giving people an ultimatum. But at the moment, the illegal routes is the only thing they have.
I know, and I think it's just going to make it 10 times. Oh, sorry, I thought I glitched. It's going to make it 10 times worse. I mean, and then and you're right, it is successive governments and governments before Labour that have done this as well. And I think to understand the gravity of this policy, it's important. It's worth looking back. So you look at Britain's hostility towards migrants as a whole, particularly those from the global south, and I think it's through that through line in its political history, manifesting in legislation that has consistently defined belonging along racial and class lines. And I think there's a huge risk in that. I think we've seen that with the Commonwealth Immigrants Act of 1962 that was passed under Macmillan's Tory government. And that was an early attempt to limit non-white migration from former colonies. And then you also had Labour's Harold Wilson, who really didn't do much to reverse it when he came into power. So these things have happened so often. And I think it's going to sound like a really weird metaphor, but it's the ghost of like Enoch Powell, where it's kind of like this, his infamous Rivers of Blood speech, where it was dismissed by the political mainstream at the time, yet its central thesis that Britain must defend itself from an imagined invasion has been steadily implemented by both major parties in the decades since. And the Windrush scandal exposed that in 2018. So I think all it is it's not a strategic blunder, but I think it's always what the party's motivations when it comes to chasing voters. Let's look at the competitive ethos of neoliberalism. I want you guys to be convinced that there are people taking things from you so that you don't focus your energies on what we're doing and how we're failing you. So I think it is just an easy scapegoat to keep that division there.
Yeah, I mean, my next question kind of touches upon what you say. Because, look, when I hear a lot of people say that this is a failed strategy from Labour, they're trying to chase reform voters, yet reform are number one in some polls. I think that's an aspect, right? But what I don't think I hear enough is that this is what these Labour MPs believe. This isn't just about political posturing. They are simply incredibly anti-migrant, incredibly anti-refugee. I mean, Yvette Cooper, this is just her politics. What do you make of that?
Yeah, quite interesting. I think, and like I was saying earlier, it's tempting to view this policy shift as a mere strategic blunder, but I think Labour chasing reform voters, despite the party's rise in the polls. But I think to frame it solely as electoral calculus would be a mistake. Yeah. The truth is, many of these Labour MPs are not reluctantly adopting anti-migrant rhetoric to win votes. I think they genuinely believe in it. Yvette Cooper, like you said, for instance, has built her political brand around being tough on immigration. And like you said, it's not posturing, it's conviction. Cooper has repeatedly pushed for restrictive border policies, embraced this securitized language about control, and positions herself as a hardliner on asylum. So Labour isn't merely adopting right-wing policies to placate a shifting electorate. I think they're embracing them because at its core, It has no fundamental opposition to them currently with this new Labour that's now come into power. So, yeah, I don't think it's electoral strategy. I genuinely now think it's just their politics at this point.
Perfectly put. I could not agree more, but we've got a lot to cover. So we are going to move on to our next story, and that is about rapper Stormzy. Stormzy has sold out almost out of the blue. The rapper has done a deal with McDonald's. Now, as you can see on your screen, his name is now all over their food packaging. The Stormzy deal. People saying in the comments it's not even a full-on burger meal, it's just some chicken nuggets. Now, you might not think that this is the most outrageous thing, right? I know McDonald's is on the boycott list, but if you can get money off them, screw them, right? Well, as we all know, when money is involved, it's not carte blanche. Stormzy has appeared to delete all of his tweets in support of Jeremy Corbyn and the Palestine movement from Twitter. So look, Stormzy was someone who was very open about his politics. He backed Jeremy Corbyn from the beginning. He didn't treat it as a phase as some people did at the height of Corbyn's sort of popularity. And he recently mentioned Corbyn. I mean, multiple times he mentioned Corbyn, saying he was still a supporter, even after he was kicked out of the party. And the same goes with Palestine. He's pretty open about his support for Palestinians. And now it's been erased. But McDonald's is one of the big targets of the boycott movement, not simply because of their business with Israel, but they directly fed the IDF soldiers. So this isn't some sort of result of a global economic system where, oh, you're really surprised that many businesses deal with Israel, but the brand went even further to show solidarity with an occupying army. Sarah, I just want to first start off with your reaction to all of this. I almost can't believe it.
No, absolutely. And I'm going to say what everyone's thinking. He's a sellout. An artist who was once celebrated for his unapologetic critiques of systemic injustice and his vocal support for marginalized communities, and his collaboration with top elitist universities to make sure that those from minoritized communities are able to access these elite establishments. And then he has this collaboration with McDonald's, long stood as the symbols of corporate dominance, like these golden arches with their neon glow casting shadows over the inequalities of global capitalism. And then he's just gone, well, I get to line my pockets, completely undermining his stance to begin with. I don't know how he's going to come back from this, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why he's done it, because it's not like he was out of pocket. You know, you see some sort of dried up celebrities who end up doing anything. But Stormzy's incredibly popular. I don't think he's got money issues. What? I mean, and also there's so many deals out that he could probably do, but True. McDonald's really takes the biscuit, doesn't it?
It does.
And it's also just so blatant. It's like cartoonishly obvious. He does a deal and then retcons his past support as if people won't notice. I mean, I was going to ask you if you think this has tarnished Stormzy forever. I think you probably.
I think in my eyes, it has. I think we can safely say that with the genocide that's been happening in Gaza, I have taken very, very intentional steps when it comes to showing my allyship and advocacy for what's going on out there, the atrocities that are happening there. And then I think, in recent times, obviously these arches, the golden arches, it's become emblematic of a more insidious complicity. And I think if you do then make this, I don't know however much you got from this, quite a few coins from this, then I think that renders you very much complicit. But what annoys me even more is that I'd seen the post that he had made about he will 100 out of 100 times always stand on the side of the oppressed.
Yeah.
How have you done this here? As McDonald's literally provided free meals to the IDF during the 2023 conflict, the corporation's entanglement in the machinery of occupation became unmistakably clear. So I don't know how he can justify that. And I think in that context, Stormzy's recent partnership with McDonald's is not merely a commercial endeavour. I think it's a stark alignment with a corporation actively implicated in the systemic oppression and genocide of the Palestinian people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, I mean, if we zoom out a little bit and not just focus this through the lens of Palestine, to sort of reference to what you mentioned before, Stormzy, his work, his music has always been about, there's definitely been a class element to it, arguably most of it, right? And you think, okay, even if McDonald's wasn't implicated in the essentially in Israel Palestine, just to see a rapper that came from uh, not not much. I don't know too much about his background, but at least a lot of his music was about class
True.
and racism, and then just to sort of do a deal with McDonald's.
Agreed.
It I've made this point before, but it gives me the Black Mirror episodes. I think 15 minutes of fame. No,
Yeah.
50 minutes something. I don't know, but the main character is rallying against the system, and at the end, you see a video of him still rallying against the system, and then it's like turns off the record button, and he's like
Yeah.
working for the system. It really reminds me of that. I'm sorry I didn't explain the episode very well. I
Yeah,
hope
I'm
you've
trying
actually
to
seen
no,
it.
because I've seen all of Black Mirror's episodes. I'm trying to remember that exact episode, but I think I've got the
The
worst
guy from
memory
Get
names
Out,
of my
the
friends.
main character from Get
Oh
Out, he's in it.
yes,
You know,
yes.
and they're all like in this underground thing, and they're all like every day they have to like
Yeah.
cycle on bikes to keep the power going.
Oh, I
But then
remember.
he lashes out and he's got like a glass against his
Yeah.
neck and whatever, like fighting the power, and then they sort of co-opt him at the end, and
Yeah.
they use that message as a bit of content.
No,
So
absolutely.
it's like the corporification.
I completely agree with you. No,
15 million merits. Thank you. My producer just told me it's called 15 million merits, and that is why I love that episode, because the ending was so depressing, but also so true.
No, completely agree with you. No, absolutely. And I think that in Stormzy's case, like you said, his collaboration with McDonald's amidst the controversial history regarding the Israel-Palestine war, completely true. But it actually also exemplifies how capitalist structures can subsume and neutralize oppositional voices. So kind of transforming them into instruments of the very system that they once critiqued. And Stormzy, like you said, did critique these oppressive structures, these oppressive systems. He himself is very open about what his upbringing was like. He didn't come from an elitist family, didn't come from an affluent area. Like, he is a voice of well, supposedly tried to posit himself as a voice of the working people. But what that's happened here is that he's now navigating very, very treacherous waters of commercial success and then ethical integrity, because now you are under a microscope and people will be judging you. The allure of like lucrative deals often comes at the cost of compromising one's values, and he has absolutely done that. So and it does lead to a cycle where genuine activism is overshadowed by performative gestures that are sanctioned by corporate interests. So yeah, I think it's imperative for us to critically like assess those dynamics.
Yeah, and it sort of parallels Ollie Alexander. I mean, he ignored calls to boycott Eurovision,
Yes.
and then he came last. So he lost his integrity and his support along the way, because it didn't boost his career. I mean, clearly he was having a bit of a difficult time. I feel so sorry for him. I don't, but like, he was thinking, he probably weighed this up in private, but thought maybe the popularity I get from this would make it worth it. But actually, I feel like he's lost his popularity and support.
Absolutely.
So even though he might get the corporate backing, at the end of the day, it's the people who made him popular in the first place.
Exactly. And it's the people that will get rid of your popularity quite easily if it comes down to that. And I think because with him, it's very, with Stormzy, I mean, I used to love Eurovision, and now I don't watch it anymore.
I
For obvious
would
reasons.
say I never ever watched Eurovision. I hated it.
Don't.
I think I
Why
used to
are you
watch back in
being...
the days when Terry Wogan used to narrate
I
it.
love
It was
Terry.
always
I used to love Terry
But just such a
Wogan.
terrible show. It was, and the thing
Oh
is
my
though, even when
God.
we were in the EU,
We're gonna
everyone
fall
hated
out.
Britain. We always came last.
We're gonna fall out. I don't know what's going on with you,
God.
Curtis. God, no, I'm joking.
Splits within the left already.
I'm joking. No, I'm completely joking. No, but so with Stormzy, I have to go back to Palestine, because standing with Palestine is not merely a political stance. I think it's a
Sure.
moral imperative. And I think, when we look at the people of Gaza who are being starved and slaughtered, their homes turned to rubble, their history being erased. And what I'm seeing here, Stormzy's deal with McDonald's in this context is not just disappointing. I think it's highlighting a larger problem: the quiet suffocation of radical voices under the weight of capital. So, and I think the question that I probably would put out there, like, if those who once spoke truth to power now dine at its table, who will be left to resist? And I don't think that he will. He's not welcome to the table anymore, in my eyes.
I mean, the Storms is something that kind of really, really hurts. Actually, really disappointed. I mean,
It does hurt.
especially because it's his I would say valiant support for Jeremy Corbyn. Like I said earlier, he didn't just support him during the height of his support when when they in 2017 got hung parliament. Right, there were a few sort of people who sort of got behind Corbyn because it was cool. But like even when Jeremy was very unpopular, even when he got kicked out, he still said, "Nah, he was the man," and it seemed like he really cared about the issue. So yeah, this does feel incredibly disappointing. But we are going to move on, and we're going to get to some of your comments. Let's have a look what we got. We're going to bring the producer. I mean, if you guys don't know, we've been doing a new thing where the producer comes in and joins us with the comments, and it's backed by popular demand. I think we're going to keep it. So let's go to the first one. We are with Callum. I can't hear Callum. I've definitely set it up properly this time.
I was on mute, that's why. Hi, everyone.
He's on mute. I thought it was me.
I'm muting myself. I was just having a look to see which one we'd like to start with first. Jacqueline, welcome back. I bet the government haven't set up legal routes, though.
Well, that was actually during the election. Keir Starmer was asked, "Are you going to have more safe and legal routes?" He said no. He said we're not going to support more safe and legal routes.
Just to take two at a time, I'll bring Edward Sexpies in as well. Hi, Edward. There are no legal routes. This is what is needed. It's disgusting. Labour centrists enabling fascists, as usual.
Yeah.
Spot on, Edward, as always.
But, sorry, I don't mean to cut in, but isn't it hilarious that the Labour Party was once synonymous with the struggle of working class dignity and like has once again chosen to cement its role as the B team of British conservatism? Like it's embarrassing. Like this recent announcement, I think it's not just an act of calculated cruelty. It's a political exorcism.
Yeah, and it's been a long time coming. It's not just Tony Blair. There were kind of wobbles with the Labour Party when it was it under Harold Wilson. I mean, I think I think Harold Wilson was genuinely like a good government, right? And I think Harold Wilson still did have some morals, absolutely.
Agreed.
But when they sort of linked up to the IMF, that's where we could see the problems sort of starting to form. So it's been 30 years, 40, 50. God, I don't know. Decades in the making.
On integration, Mobius has said when they say integrate, quote, what they mean is assimilate, i.e. take on the ideas, customs, politics of the dominant group. There was lots of conversation in the chat about integration. Jim Speaks saying integration is when your body stops producing melanin, which I thought was quite an accurate take compared to if you think about what some people mean when they say integration. I am sick of hearing this integration word though, because it's all bandied. Yeah, but they don't integrate. And when you ask people what they mean by that, I find that it depends on who you ask. Depending on who you ask, you get 10 different answers.
Yeah, because what does integration look like? What does it actually look like? I don't understand. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I mean,
because sometimes it's a case of these people they're in their own groups and they're running their own things for the community and they're knocking on doors, giving out freebies to people in the community as part of Ramadan, and they're just making a big scene of themselves. And it's like, so hang on, so they're engaging in the local community, they're doing things to help people that are in need, food parcels or whatever, and that's a problem. But then on the flip side, you hear, they never take part in anything in the community and they never do anything with anybody else. So it's like if you see people that they're not integrating, if you don't see people they're not integrating. I feel sorry for anyone that comes to this country and gets labelled with that not integrating label, because it's like, what the hell do you want from them?
Well, it's so easy for Brits to have this, to not understand this point though, because since we colonized the whole world, wherever we go, it's that every country's set up well for us, right? They speak English, it's got large Western culture, so they think, well, it's easy for us to integrate. Yeah. You're lucky you got a very British colony behind you to help you with that.
On that point, Mike Ellison said you can't illegally rob the entire world for 500 years and then declare the victim refugees of your actions illegal, so they can't profit from the wealth you stole yourself.
Exactly.
Do you know what that question or comment, reminds me of Akalar. He makes this amazing point. He says, look, for hundreds of years, the crown has pillaged and stolen wealth from across the world, across the global south. And yes, there's high amounts of migrants and refugees because they're people simply following the wealth that was theirs.
And
very simple.
But also, like, is this not? This could simply. I think there's a simple solution to integration. Isn't citizenship the single most effective mechanism maybe for integration, because it would
Yeah,
provide
taking it off
security,
them.
access to opportunity, and the psychological assurance that this country is not just some temporary shelter that you get to be in, but actually a home that you can establish yourself in. And I think they're like, you are like I said earlier, institutionalizing alienation every single time you move this rhetoric of, well, they're not integrating to what? Should we all jump in the fact that we think the Windrush scandal was absolutely justified? Like, what do you want? You want us to say that yes, the back the atrocities that are happening and say, yeah, 14 years of austerity was so fine by me, and that I'm so okay with the fact that 50,000 kids are in temporary accommodation? What does integration actually look like in Britain? Because at the moment, all I'm seeing is that people are spouting it and weaponizing it to those that they can easily racialize.
And the thing that gets me with that point about citizenship as well is that, and I know this is something that people have heard a million times, but I do find it ironic that a lot of the people that are spouting this rhetoric wouldn't be able to pass a life in the UK test, which is a requirement to receive British citizenship.
I don't think I could pass it myself.
I tried.
In fairness, it is a ridiculous qualifier in order to get citizenship.
It is
completely ridiculous. But it does sort of make me chuckle every time. I feel like saying to these people, well, I'll tell you what, if you can pass a life in the UK test, then you can talk about integration. Because like you say, most of us probably couldn't do that. Just moving on. Zeke the Beast, Sarah's nails are slaying.
You know what? This quote is so happy because I got them done on Friday. Thank you, guys. There's a flower. That's what I want.
They are very nice.
Thank you.
There's a lot to go through with this next story. So, Daniel Watson, what if Stormzy is playing the long game and secretly siphoning money off to Palestine charities with his mucky mackies money?
Do you buy it?
I like the alliteration at the end there.
I think it's a nice thought, but
yeah.
I think that's like what if Keir Starmer's secretly a socialist and he's just going to force all these socialist policies on us.
This time next week, I promise he'd be more left wing.
Yeah.
Daniel, I don't know if that's sarcasm or not, but he has enough money to do that anyway.
Yeah.
There is surely though a point here, which is that, like, as you've already touched upon, he was a supporter of Corbyn through the bad times as well as the good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you don't just suddenly change your political views overnight.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that his politics has changed. I just don't see how it could have changed so drastically.
Well, yeah, I think he silently supports Palestine, but that's not fucking good enough.
It's not.
Yeah.
But like that's the thing, to touch up on what you're saying. It confuses me, right? Because he supported Jeremy Corbyn through the easy and tough times. Mm-hmm. He's not like well, up until now, he didn't seem like he was a bit of a flaker. He seems like he stood firm, right? I don't know why that's why I'm so confused. Why is he suddenly flipped with some measly, stupid deal with McDonald's?
No, I do wonder, and I'm not saying this to defend him, but I do wonder how much say he's actually had in the decision to delete the social media posts, because a lot of these celebrities, they don't run their own social media. They've got a team behind them that run it. Sometimes it can be as simple as literally clearing things out to make space for something different. They like the social media to have a particular aesthetic if they've got a new brand deal coming up and things like that. But what does speak volumes is, to my knowledge, he hasn't come out and made any sort of statement. Like, I could maybe have understood it if he'd have turned around and released a statement and said, look, my management deleted the post. They've not been deleted. They've just been archived. They deleted the post because they wanted to clean up my social media to make room for the McDonald's thing. Those posts are still there and they'll be going back, in due course or whatever. And I still stand by the Palestinian people and by my previous sort of views. I think I'd have a lot more respect for him, but he hasn't, he's not even spoken about it.
I mean, to be fair, obviously, I know you're playing devil's advocate, but for me, it's like, okay, most of the time these people don't run their own social media accounts. It probably isn't Stormzy, but I mean, they're going to delete some posts, because I don't think that was Stormzy's idea. I think he would have happily kept up his vocal support for Corbyn and Palestine whilst doing this deal. What I personally think, and I could be completely wrong, that the representatives of Stormzy, like his agent, would have spoke to reps from McDonald's. They would have done a deal, and then the agent would have went back to Storm and said, "This is what the terms are." He could have been like, "Fuck off with your terms," and or do what you suggest, that even if the agent just deleted these tweets without him knowing, come out and say, "By the way, I absolutely have not moved."
Because I am just reading that. I am just reading that apparently Sky News had reported that the deletion of the post was part of a quote mass archiving effort that took place last year and isn't linked to the new advert. But celebrities do often do things like that. But if that is what it is, why not just say that? Why not just publicly release a statement and just say, I stand by my comments, free Palestine, Jeremy Corbyn and all that jazz. And why not address it?
But I'm sorry, archive what? Like, archive that Palestine's now, I've done my advocacy for the day. Like, yeah, fuck it, I'm done. Like, no, I'm sorry. You don't get to archive Palestine because it's still happening. And I'm a little bit more unforgiving when it comes to this. The dissonance between Stormzy's previous advocacy, and I'm going to use that in quotation marks now, and his current corporate alliance raises really pressing questions about the co-optation of dissenting voices within capitalist frameworks. I don't think I can forgive him. I will call him a sellout because this is a money grab. You're not doing this out of the kindness of your heart when you're doing a 9-nugget meal and a Sprite and a McFlurry. You're getting paid for it. Like, we're not mugs. Like, you got paid quite a handsome amount for it. So when I think about him lining his pockets and the starvation of those in Gaza and the complete destruction of Rafah, like, I'm like, no thanks. All of us who probably don't get a lot every single month. I know that I don't. Like, I willingly want to say that, willingly will say, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, because I do believe that there is power in just one person doing something and then us collectively doing it even better. But then don't say 100 out of 100 times I am on the side of the oppressed. You've proven in this instance you're not.
Yeah, and Andrew Milton's just said, I think he lacked integrity to begin with. So shocked, so many people are shocked. He isn't exactly Akila Aloki. He's been the industry's golden boy for years. And I just
maybe we are naive. Maybe that's it.
Possibly. I know we're pressed for time, but I just want to bring in a few more. Just some talk about McDonald's specifically. So Keith said McDonald's has been accused of failing to protect young female staff from sexual harassment, e.g. a boss demanding sex for extra shifts. Now, I spent about 3 years or so working for a local branch of McDonald's. I say a local branch because some of them are franchises.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that I witnessed things in the workplace that, are not appropriate. And these reports that have come out, I mean, it's a huge problem that runs within McDonald's. And I think a large part of it comes from the type of, I don't want to say the type of staff that they hire, but they often hire a lot of younger, less experienced people. For a lot of 16, 17-year-olds, it's sort of the first job. But then what happens is very quickly you end up with a situation where, like when I was working there, I was sort of early to mid 20s, maybe 24, 25, something like that. And I'm trying to think when I left, I was maybe a bit younger than that. But I was working there with, I had managers who were 17 who were managing me at like 24.
Okay.
And I think and I think sometimes what happens is when you end up in a situation like that, the power dynamic is really odd, but it leads to situations where if you've got a 17-year-old manager and a 16-year-old crew member, and you've got someone who's managing the place who is inexperienced, they don't know what they're doing, and then they decide to be inappropriate, it breeds this really odd culture because you've just got like and again, not making excuses for it, but it kind of explains, I think, why sometimes it has this really awful culture. And I don't know what McDonald's have done about it. They said they were going to act, but I don't think they have. But I think linking it back to the Stormzy story, not only has McDonald's been feeding RDF soldiers in Israel, in Israel that have been going into Gaza. But it's a problematic company anyway for other reasons, like the sexual harassment allegations, and it just seems odd that somebody with a net worth of what is it, something like 20 million, would even, especially with his political beliefs, would even need to why do it?
Yeah, and obviously this is going to be, even though McDonald's is specifically targeted here because it's been exposed, this is going to happen across all industries and all companies as well. It's just so prevalent. So it's a societal thing, but also you're absolutely right that you might have positions where like a young and inexperienced person may not know how to deal with this as well. So it's a good point you make there.
Agreed. And I think this is what capitalism kind of thrives off of, like, co-opting resistance and transforming voices of dissent into marketable commodities. And I think it reduces struggle to aesthetics and repackages radicalism into digestible, brand-friendly slogans, whilst contributing to uphold the very structures activists once sought to dismantle. So in this way, capitalism, with McDonald's in particular, does not merely neutralise opposition, it monetises it.
What do you both make of... excuse me. Sorry about that. What do you both make of 80s music comment? It is time for the red wedge to be reformed to campaign for a right-wing Labour government, 80s style, as it did back then, as this would represent a move to the left in the current climate.
I don't really understand the comment, if I'm honest.
I think they're saying that a right-wing 80s style Labour government would be a more left-wing government than what we have today.
Oh, I see. Okay, so the Overton window has moved so far to the right that yes, like if we were to bring back an 80s Labour government, I mean, well, there wasn't an 80s Labour government, but I see what you're trying to say. Yeah, or an opposition, I suppose. Yeah, I agree. Like the Overton window has massively shifted, even when Thatcher took power. Like, I even would say that the aspects of Tony Blair's Labour Party is more progressive than Starmer's Labour Party. When it comes to obviously Iraq war and stuff, obviously not. But then you've also got Keir Starmer's support for genocide on there. But you got certain things like the minimum wage, you got devolution, you got Sure Start, investment. I know a lot of it was PFI, massive criticisms of that. But there were some alleviations of capitalism that the Labour Party did under Blair, right? Of course, I don't think that was Blair himself. I think he actually took the left kind of seriously. Gordon Brown's ideas were very, very good. This is different from Keir Starmer. This, to me, is the most right-wing Labour Party I've ever seen. I can't say in my lifetime because I'm not old enough, but certainly when I've done research on it, and I think many people who are a bit older than me who have been members of the Labour Party their entire lives say the same thing. If that is what the point you're making, 80s music, then that's my answer. Apologies if I got that wrong. I got a bit confused, that's all.
Yeah. I'm just having a look. There's another comment that I'd like to bring up, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly before I do. Ami AM is saying, "Don't be dense." As a black man, Stormzy doesn't get to check out, and this is following an earlier comment saying that it says, "Easy, white people, a black sellout is a joke," and they're also saying that sellout is a strong allegation. What do you make of that? I mean, is there a level of of institutional racism going after the black guy for making this decision, or is it deeper than that?
I find this quite difficult to even answer, because I think he is a black man and he's done incredible for himself to be able to establish himself and posit himself within the music industry that has long silenced black voices. However, I cannot absolve him of this. I think that right is right and wrong is wrong, and it's okay to call out what is wrong. And I think what is wrong here is that this commercial endeavor, like I said earlier, is a stark alignment with a corporation that has been implicated in the systemic oppression and genocide of the Palestinian people. So I don't know how else to even unpack that, to be honest.
I mean, we've been defended in the comments because, first of all, neither of us are white. we've got a black co-host and what a brown host.
Well, I mean, I am.
But... you are in the background. We can't actually see you. We still ratio you 2 to 1. But I don't want to play that game. I don't want to say, because I'm brown, I can speak on this.
Well,
if you're sorry, I just want to say, if you're aware of Turn Left, I mean, you might be a new viewer, but Turn Left is consistently called out the genocide in Palestine, and we've consistently attacked those who've purported the genocide or supported it. So I don't know about your experience when, like, maybe you've seen some sort of racial bias when it comes to accusing a black person of selling out. I can tell you that I don't care who you are. If you are even wavering in your support against a community of people who are being wiped off the face of the earth, you're getting called out. And, you know, it's calling Stormzy a sellout. He's doing a deal with McDonald's, who does business with Israel, who fed, you know, occupation forces.
Yeah.
Like,
and Youngsins...
It's nothing wrong to say he's a sellout. So I do reject your claim that this could be some sort of bias here.
Youngsins makes a really good point there as well. Absolutely not. If anything, as a black man, Stormzy knows all about solidarity. He's just choosing capital this time.
Yeah.
Which I think is...
I would agree with that. And I think, like we were saying this earlier, but like the allure of like these lucrative deals comes at the cost of compromising one's values. And I think it, like, I can't remember what I said earlier, but it kind of leads to a cycle where genuine activism is overshadowed by performative gestures, sanctioned by corporate interests. So, and I think that cycle, and I will give credit to what they're saying, is particularly harsh on black artists or minoritized artists, so who are given platforms to challenge injustice and be the voice for those that are rendered silenced or marginalized in society. But only so long as their critiques do not threaten the foundational structures of capital. So the moment they step outside these carefully drawn lines, I think their influence is kind of curtailed and their voices silenced and their integrity questioned. And I think it's okay to question when someone does do something quite questionable.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Ami AM's responded saying, okay, point me to content that discusses other genocides or war. Ami, if you keep watching, we will be talking about another war in 2 stories time. So
yeah, and if you're referring to Turn Up, we also on the last show or the show before that on the debrief, we talked about Sudan and the genocide in Sudan. So of course, Israel-Palestine is the most heightened one, of course, so you're going to get that, but also remember, we are all a bunch of volunteers as well. Not every story gets to be covered. But we do our best.
But on that point, I'm gonna disappear back into the background and leave you to continue.
Thank you, Callum, for joining in with those comments.
Thanks for having me.
Before we move on to our next story, I do just want to jump off of the back of what I just said. We are a group of volunteers. There's only a handful of us who are doing our best to bring political content to you. Most of us, or all of us, are working full time. So after, we kind of have to like write these shows in a short space of time. We don't get all day to do it. And of course, to build a fully fledged media organization, it does take money. So there are plenty of things you can do. You can go to our website, which is turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. You've got 2 options. You can support us on Patreon and give us a monthly donation, or you can go to our other website. The link is on there, and you can give a one-off donation. Finally, you can become a member of the channel for 99p. Of course, there is a big cut from YouTube taken out of that, but we appreciate it regardless. If you don't have money to support us, don't feel pressurized in doing so. There are so many other ways you can support us. You can like this stream. This will help the algorithm show this content to more people. If you're not subscribed to us, we're literally like 3 away from 18k. So get us to that 18,000. Share our content, like us. Follow us on all social medias. We're on Twitter. We're on Blue Sky. Our handle is at turnleftmedia.co.uk. And just tell people about us. In conversation, say, oh, we've heard that new media organisation, Turn Left. I think they're pretty damn good. So you can do all of that. And I believe that some people have already gifted some Turn Left memberships in the chat. So thank you so much for your generosity. It means the world. So thank you. But we are going to move on because it's already 10 to 9. We've got 2 more stories to cover. Sorry, my script is not moving. Here we go. Reform Deputy Leader Richard Tice peddled climate denial conspiracies on Sky News. We're going to take a look right now.
Do you believe in man-made climate change?
Look, climate change is real, has gone on for millions of years, always will. The arrogant naivety of people who think that you can stop the power of the sun stop the power of volcanoes.
But talk about man-made climate
Hear me
change.
out. Yeah. But there's no evidence that man-made CO2 is going to change climate change. Given that it's gone on for millions of years, it will go on for millions of years.
Hold on, so
Hang on, hear me out.
You're saying there's no evidence that man-made climate change is changing CO2? Is that what you're saying?
So how did climate change happen before man-made CO2?
What is it that the vast majority of experts who
There are thousands of
believe that
scientists
human activity has impacted climate
There are thousands
change
of scientists
since
who agree
the
with my
Industrial
position.
Revolution? What is it that you know that they don't?
I've read the International Governmental Panel on Climate Change's report, AR6 I think it's called, their sixth report, and it says if you get to net zero tomorrow, it'll make no difference to sea level rise for between 200 years and 1,000 years. In other words, they've not got a clue and it won't make any difference. We're being lied to, we're being misinformed, and we've got the courage to say to people, we've got to stop this nonsense. We all care about the environment, we all care about the countryside. That's why I don't want pylons blighting our countryside. That's why I don't want solar panels on it. But to suggest that a bit less CO2 is going to stop the power of the sun, stop the power of volcanoes, is arrant nonsense.
I mean, like, I have real big problems of our mainstream pundits. I mean, I don't know who that person was actually. I probably should have looked at her. But that pundit should have been far better at rebutting what Richard Tice was saying. So Richard Tice was talking utter nonsense. And the best they can do was sort of defer to what other people said. Well, the scientists on this panel would disagree with you. Just call out the bullshit to his face, right? Look, he has no clue what he's talking about. No one has denied that climate always changes. This is a talking point from the political right, which says, well, you talk about man-made climate change. For millions of years, the climate's changed, right? That is true. The climate has changed for millions of years. The point is that we are rapidly changing the climate that is unfit for human habitation. So when we say the planet is being destroyed, yes, I guess that's slight hyperbole, right? The Earth will always exist. It's not going to die. But sea levels are rising. Cities will be underwater. There's going to be millions of climate refugees because people have to flee from areas where it's no longer safe to live. And I don't know why he brought up the sun. What a weird thing to say. I mean, but this is utter nonsense. But I wonder if this is going to work on people. I'm scared that it will. Now, I did cover this in a video yesterday, but I think, I want to mention it because it's relevant. And this is Richard Tice's massive hypocrisy. So Richard Tice is a chief executive of a company that works with renewables. Richard Tice's property company has enthusiastically embraced green technologies despite his public hostility as Reform UK chair to net zero targets and some of the same initiatives. Electric car charging points and roof-mounted solar panels are increasingly featuring in refurbishment efforts undertaken by Quidnet REIT Limited, of which Tice is chief executive. The company buys, refurbishes and leases out properties to businesses. It told shareholders last year that solar panels generating electricity were helping to substantially increase rental income and were saving hundreds of tons of CO2 per annum. Such efforts are part of an emerging trend among property companies to recognise their rooftops and parking areas are ripe for profitable green development. There's also the fact that Rupert Lowe, who was another Reform MP, installed solar panels on his farm because it was cheaper. That was the reason. Sarah, we've got a lot to unpack here.
Could you hear me giggling in the background?
I can hear you giggling in the background. People can't hear you, but I mean, I can hear you now. But one of the main talking points, right, from climate denialists is that the climate is always changing, right? Are you worried that this talking point, which is false, could work? Now, to be fair to British attitudes, we are pretty pro-environmentalist. However, Reform are polling well, and it doesn't seem that it's hurt them.
Yeah, it's fundamentally misleading to constantly say, but the climate's always changing. Look at the sun. Like the way he was pointing his finger as well, I was like, stop. But yeah, I mean, the Earth's climate, if we want to speak about, has shifted, over millennia. But I think the rapid warming we are witnessing today is not part of a natural cycle. It's definitely driven by human activity, but primarily the burning of fossil fuels. And the speed and intensity of these global temperature rises have no precedent in recorded history. So Reform politicians obviously lean on this line, not because they misunderstand science, although I would argue that they do, but because it provides an easy soundbite to deflect from the overwhelming evidence of climate change. And I think their strategy is pretty clear, like harness the energy of disaffected voters and those that feel disenfranchised, many of whom have been fed a diet of tabloid-fueled climate skepticism already, and direct their anger at net zero zealots. Like, I think it's classic reactionary politics. Oppose progress, not because it's wrong, but because it threatens the order that sustains them. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what do you make of the hypocrisy, though? I mean, Tice and Lowe, they support renewable energy, but in private. Because publicly they say it's a con, but as I said, as I was just showing there, that Tice has literal investments. I mean, he's a chief exec of a company that manages investments of renewables, and Rupert Lowe, like, literally put solar panels on his farm. Can you explain, or at least try to explain, this massive contradiction?
Can I explain why they do the things that they do? No, but I can absolutely criticize them. Like, despite their posturing, like, the Reform Party as a whole is not anti-establishment, and the examples that you've given prove that. Their leadership is composed of multi-millionaires, ex-Tory MPs, and figures with deep ties to the financial elite. Richard Tice himself is a property tycoon. So, and the party's backers are hardly the champions of the working class that they claim to be. So their backers and the people that surround them, they support deregulation. They don't support their correction. Their policies on deregulation, tax cuts for the wealthy, and attacks on green energy serve only to consolidate the power. And I think that's all they want to do. They want to consolidate all the power that they can garner. And their brand of populism, I think, is a carefully curated illusion. Like, I think that's what they're trying to sell, designed to convince struggling communities that their suffering is the fault of climate activists and immigrants and progressive policies. It's all part of their act. A perfect example of that is through this contradiction.
Well, I mean, Reform has taken money from the oil industry and climate denialists. They accepted 2.3 million from fossil fuel interests in the 2019 election. So it's clear why they push this narrative. But the fact that they personally benefit from renewables, this proves that they're lying. Because Tice in that clip was like, well, I've had thousands of scientists agree with me. First of all, you will always get, 99.99% of scientists say that climate change is man-made, or the effects of climate change is man-made. Just that you would get 99% of scientists say that the moon landing was real. Okay, you're going to get like a 0.1% who will poo on that, right? And you're selectively hearing this. But again, he's lying when he says he's had scientists say that actually the other side is right, because once again, they actually believe in renewable energy since they use it themselves. But obviously they take money from the oil industry, so they don't give a flying fuck about the working class or the people. They're doing it because, let's be honest, they're daddy corporations. They're sycophantic bitch for capital, they are. That's what they are. I call them the bitches for capital, and it's
bitches for capital. I mean, but you're absolutely right. And even like going back to the contradiction, like that double think, I think is a political maneuver. Like, it allows them to appease business interests, investing in renewables, but whilst also like simultaneously stoking public resentment against green policies. So I think what's being highlighted is that their message isn't about truth, but about mobilizing discontent, attacking green energy when it suits them, whilst ensuring they still profit from a sector that they publicly discredit. So I think their contradiction is not an oversight, but a deliberate strategy to kind of maintain influence over both industry and public opinion. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think that their climate denial is, and it's not just the Starmer. It's not just like an abstract ideological like debate. I think it definitely has real consequences here. So yeah, every moment wasted entertaining these ridiculous fabrications that they're making is a moment stolen from the urgent work that we could be doing when it comes to transitioning to renewable energy, protecting vulnerable communities, and securing a livable future. Because we all know for a fact that the people who are most impacted by a climate crisis are those who are on the margins, those who are most vulnerable. So yeah.
But I'm pissed off, right, at the mainstream media. I'm pissed off at that interaction, because the way the mainstream media operates is they say they want to be fair and balanced. And of course, the problem with trying to be balanced all the time is that you give credence to bullshit arguments. It's why, Turn Left is about objective reporting. Whether it's seen as biased or not, that doesn't matter. What matters is objectiveness. Now, what they do is like, well, we've got a climate skeptic who says this thing. And then the journalist or the host will go, well, so he says this is climate change is all bullshit. What do you say to that one? Or some people or scientists would disagree with you. Just be objective.
Yeah.
That person who spoke to Richard Tice should have said, it's clear why you're pushing this bullshit narrative because your party is funded by the oil industry. Now, why is it that Rupert Lowe has solar panels? Why is it that you're a chief executive of a company that that works with renewables? If you think it's such a con, 99.99% of scientists say this. So actually, you pretending that your worldview is like legitimate, no, we are going to call that out. And of course, some people are going to be like, well, that's a bit biased. Fuck impartiality. You need objective reporting. Something that we do at Turn Left, by the way, and the mainstream media do not do. I would love to carry on talking about this, but I know it's coming up to 9:05, and we're going to move on to our last story. So, Keir Starmer has announced that British troops will be sent to Ukraine if a peace deal is reached. Keir Starmer has said he is prepared to put British troops on the ground in Ukraine if there is a deal to end the war with Russia, acknowledging it could put UK forces in harm's way if Vladimir Putin launches another attack. It is understood to be the first time the Prime Minister has explicitly stated he is considering deploying British peacekeepers to Ukraine. The comments came just before emergency talks with European leaders in Paris on Monday. The leaders will aim to devise a strategy in response to Donald Trump's push for a deal with the Russian president and to fears the US will reduce its defense commitments in Europe. Now, I'm sorry to say, but this seems utterly ridiculous to me. Look, I know people have criticized some of my takes on Ukraine because I said, look, I'm okay with aid being sent to Ukraine, all right? But my red line has always been no boots on the ground. Now, look, this isn't a fight. I think this should be in our sort of behalf. We shouldn't be sending British troops over because I don't think they act as peacekeepers, right? Surely we should have non-partisan peacekeepers. Surely that's appropriate, not British troops. Sarah, just want your initial sort of response to this. What do you think about Keir Starmer saying he's going to be sending British troops to Ukraine?
For what? And I think I echo the same stance as you. I think this kind of does send shivers down my spine because you're doing it to gain what? You want people to like you? You want to show that, I don't understand the incentive behind it. And I think to understand the gravity of Starmer's position, one has to first grasp the wider imperialist dynamics at play.
Yeah.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine is not, as the more vulgar apologists of Putin would have it, an anti-imperialist struggle against Western encroachment, but it's an imperialist venture in and of its own right. If you put boots on the ground in Ukraine, how's Putin going to react to this? Because the continuation of centuries-old project of Russian expansionism has literally sought to dominate in its periphery through coercion and through force, and they've shown that Putin is doing that, and Putinism is going to excel in that. So I think when we think of the Tsarist subjugation of Poland, and then looking at the Soviet invasions of Hungary and Czechoslovakia, Russian power has actually always rested on the violent suppression of those seeking autonomy. So Starmer doing this, I don't see why we're getting our military involved in Ukraine. And actually, I think it's Starmer trying to posit himself as some altruistic actor, where it's like, oh,
absolutely,
I'm doing what I can. We're so brave. Look at us go. It's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, yeah. To speak to that last bit you just said, Keir Starmer has done nothing domestically for people. Right. I mean, the Labour's domestic policy is atrocious. What he really enjoys is globetrotting and speaking to leaders. Oh, look at me, I'm a proper global statesman. I don't know how good that accent was.
That was good.
But his favourite place to go and the person to speak to is Zelensky. I mean, he did that 100 deal with Zelensky. I'm sorry, but fucking ridiculous. Yeah. He loves doing this. Look, okay, to do the devil's advocate argument, people are saying because the US have sort of, it looks like they've kind of ripped up the commitment to either NATO or Ukraine, and the US being sort of the big safeguard against Russia. I mean, it didn't stop Russia from invading Ukraine. That we need to be a bit more hawkish and we need to boost our defense on Ukraine. I'm throwing that out there to you. What would you say in response to that?
Look at you playing devil's advocate, and you've actually thrown me off. I mean, I personally I can't back it. Like, I think the British state does not engage in military interventions for the cause of democracy or freedom. I think it does so in pursuit of its own geopolitical interests, whether securing energy supplies or reinforcing NATO's hegemony. But if British troops were to be deployed in Ukraine, let's just entertain it. I don't think it would be in service of any sort of liberation, but as pawns in an increasingly dangerous game of escalation between nuclear powers. And I think it would be a direct confrontation between Britain and Russia. And I do think that it would kind of make Starmer look more like an idiot, to be honest. Like, you're trying to position yourself on the global sphere, but it's grotesque. Because I think we were having this conversation earlier, if we were to make this comparison with how he kind of had this steadfast refusal to make any meaningful action on Gaza, he offered only the empty platitudes of a man who values his proximity to power more than he does human life. And I think that is proving relevant again here with Ukraine. It just feels like an impulsive decision, and I don't know if that answered your question.
Well, yeah, I mean, it does. You certainly pointed out the hypocrisy among the liberal elite. I mean, I would say the right-wing elite as well, all of the establishment when it comes to foreign policy, which is that fuck Gaza, but also we're going to send all the support to Ukraine. And there's clearly a contradiction here. I think, look, I can't understand why he announced this when a deal hasn't been reached. And the policy is send troops to Ukraine when a deal has been reached to keep the peace, right? But why would you announce this before a deal has been reached? I mean, don't you think this is going to make a peace deal less likely? Because Putin's going to go, well, I'm not going to do a deal because if we make this deal, Western allies are going to send their troops at the border.
Agreed.
So whether you agree with this policy or not, surely the timing of this is utterly stupid.
It's so stupid. And I think it highlights contradictions in, like you were mentioning earlier, Starmer's foreign policy, that also reflect the contradictions of the British state itself. So it kind of makes us look like a bit of a joke. I think it will forever be eager to participate in wars that serve NATO interests, regardless of the human cost. But when presented with an atrocity in which Britain has direct complicity, its political class will equivocate, delay, and obscure. And so it's not pragmatism. I think it's cowardice dressed as diplomacy. And I think that's what Starmer is kind of positing himself as. Britain should not be escalating the war in Ukraine, nor should it be aiding, obviously, Israel's destruction of Gaza. But in terms of Ukraine, we should not be directly getting involved. We should be calling out for the atrocities that are happening. But like you said as well, if no deal is there, why are you just playing with fire? Why? Exactly. You know what Putin's like. Like, Putin, with all due respect, seems like some impulsive, authoritarian, tyrannical leader. Like, I'm not one to want to fuck around with Putin. So how are you protecting the interests of British people when you make decisions like this?
I'm sorry, but I feel like this risks escalation directly between the UK and Russia.
Yes, it does. It absolutely does.
People, I mean, look, there's some really good comments in the chat that slightly disagree with me. Really interesting takes people have got. But to me, this feels like it is increasing tensions with us. It's not our war. They are our allies, absolutely, right? And look, I am largely a non-interventionist, right? I think that we should have military intervention when it comes to, Israel-Palestine, because that to me is not a war. That's a 75-year occupation, right? You've got over 100,000 Palestinians killed, murdered by Israel. That's a genocide, right? You have the Rwandan genocide. I think it's good to have military intervention to stop essentially this superpower against an oppressed sort of community, country, right? Russia, Ukraine, right? That is a war between two democracies. And of course, Ukraine does have the West behind it, closely linked with NATO, probably will be in NATO soon. It's a different context. I feel sympathy for the Ukrainians, of course I do. But I don't think we should be getting ourselves involved, boots on the ground, when I don't think it's our war. I mean, isn't that how sort of huge global conflicts happen in the first place, when allies start jumping in and getting involved?
Completely agree with you. And I think in an era of what's proving to be reckless Western berkmanship, I think this is Starmer's latest, obviously, gambit, but I think it's one that places the UK on the precipice of a catastrophe. And I think a direct confrontation between Britain and Russia, however unintentional it may initially be, I think would carry risks so grave that even the most hawkish of Cold War strategists would have balked at the prospect. So I think the lessons that we can learn from Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya, it's not just that Western intervention does not bring peace, but that it deepens conflicts and it leaves devastation in its wake. So I think it's not a well thought out plan, and that's what I want to criticize. It just feels impulsive. It doesn't feel like it's happening at a correct time when no deal has been made currently. I think that there are ways of going about something in a delicate manner. And maybe delicacy isn't what's needed when dealing with Putin. But I also don't think that a direct confrontation with Putin is anything that's going to be beneficial to us as well. And then, lo and behold, I really genuinely do think that if this does happen and some war wages between Britain and Russia, people are going to say, but why did you get involved in the first place? Ukraine wasn't our war. It wasn't our war. And people are going to be so pissed off. All the money that's being wasted on this, that, and the other.
Well, especially when they have committed £3 billion a year. Right?
Yeah.
They're looking at increasing military spending. And they're saying they're going to use it with austerity, i.e. cuts to welfare. And they're coming after disabled people. So to stand and say, we are going to make lives for those on welfare, disabled people even harder, so we can send money and put troops. It's going to cost money to put troops over there, who then we're putting troops in harm's way. I mean, how does this look optically when you've got... What if our troops does get harmed by Russian forces? How's that going to look? Look, there's a difference of opinion, I think, among people that turn left, which is fine. But for me, this doesn't make any sense. I do think it's escalation. I don't think it means, there could be a direct war with UK and Russia. But I think that the establishment has gotten foreign policy wrong so many damn times. Why are we doing the same things over and over? I completely sympathise with the idea when people say, well, what part of Britain would you give up? But the difference is, if that's a direct war with Britain, you're going to fight back, which is why we support Ukraine's fighting back against Russia. It's why I'm okay for arms and aid to be sent to them. I mean, okay, I feel gross about it with arms and stuff, but I get it. But I don't think we should have boots on the ground. I think it's very simple. I don't know if you had any more to say to that or not.
No, I do agree. And obviously I will always wholeheartedly critique and completely criticize Russian imperialism, because what's happening in Ukraine is absolutely heinous and abhorrent. And I don't want people to think that I'm not wanting this war in Ukraine to end. I absolutely do. I just don't think that this is a logical way of doing it.
Yeah, and it's why I criticise, I believe it's Article 5 of NATO, which is basically attack on one and attack us all. I mean, I think it's supposedly a deterrent. I mean, that's the point of it, but it makes me very, very nervous. The last thing I want is global conflicts. I have to say, though, tonight has been an incredible show. You have been absolutely fantastic. You're on fire, Sarah.
I hope so.
I'm so excited that you've joined the team, though. It means so much.
Oh my God, no, I'm honoured that I'm here.
I'm honoured that you agreed to join Turn Left. And we've got Callum in the background saying me too as well.
No, I'm very happy to be here.
But I also am very honoured by our chat. We have such a good community. Even where we disagree, I think it's very good that people are giving their view. Everyone in chat's been very cordial. They don't all agree with me, but that's good. That's fine.
That's the beauty of it, though, isn't it? Like, to be able to have respectful discourse without it venturing into these, like, because I think a lot of the time whenever I see it on TikTok, it's insult. But actually, there's beauty to a discourse that has opposing views. So yeah,
we've got good people. We've got good viewers. We've had a very good show tonight. We've had over 100 concurrent viewers on YouTube. We've got 160 viewers on Twitter. And also, I want to quickly say, Border Prince has gifted 5 Turn Left memberships. Legend. Border Prince, you are a legend. Thank you so much. Legend. These are, all these small bits of donations really, really help because, one, obviously, we want to start paying ourselves. It means we can actually spend more time on research and stuff. We can go live, every day maybe. But also, equipment needs to be done. We want to do more interviews. We've done a couple this week, actually, or last week, actually. If you guys aren't aware, we've got Carla Denya. We filmed that one. That's in the editing room. But we want to get some more high-profile interviews, but getting a train, booking out studios costs a lot of money. And also, we want to get a studio as well. So some of us don't have to stream from our bedrooms. But I guess it's a journey, isn't it? It's a journey.
Oh God!
But again,
I can
thank
see
you.
Cal's face is smiling down there, like.
Yeah, we can see Callum at the bottom, can't we? But yes. So we have a question about Sneaker. Sneaker has stepped back from Turn Left. So we wish her well, but make sure you do follow her on TikTok. She's got
great content.
Sneaker's got some fantastic content on TikTok.
Amazing
She's hilarious. But yes, as of Turn Left, she has stepped back. But please go follow her on TikTok. I know that we've had someone ask in the chat, so I wanted to address that. But yeah, I think we're going to leave it there. I think that was a really, really enjoyable show.
Yes, it was wonderful.
Maybe I should start wearing more casual clothes then. I don't know. No, I'm not. I'll be back in my blazers and my suits.
Love it. I will probably still be cash, but different nails sometimes. So
Yes, love the nails. But yes, thank you to all the viewers who tuned in. And of course, thank you to the wonderful Sarah Dalal. It has been a pleasure. Remember to like this stream. And if you're not a subscriber, hit that button. I think we were like 4 away from 18K before the live show. We still are. We haven't hit 18K yet. At least 4 of you, if you're not subscribed to us, hit that subscribe button so we can say we've hit 18,000. But we are trying to get to 20,000 very soon because we're a nice little milestone. Now, if you want to see us grow, you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/supports. There is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly, and the other link, you can give us a one-time contribution. Thank you again to everyone. I'm Curtis Daly, and I will see you next time.
Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn Left.